Hello everyone and welcome to another very important game from round 9 of this year's Tata Steel Masters edition. Vincent Keymer versus Nodirbek Abdusattorov. Vincent, who already lost 3 games and is currently without a single win, is looking for that first win so he can get things going before the tournament ends. And Abdusattorov without a single loss. He defeated Magnus Carlsen. He's currently leading the tournament by a full point. If he just continues playing steadily, not only will he win first place in the Tata Steel, but he will also grab like a lot of rating points. He's already, I can check, I don't want to trick you guys, let me just check, since he's currently on 27-13, yeah, he's up 23. That's 27-36. So he's currently at 27-36 on the live ratings list, which means that if he does really well, like he could end the tournament with 27-50, perhaps even, which would be incredible. But Vincent is a deadly opponent, especially with the white pieces. Let's see what happens in this game. So Vincent opens with c4. He goes for the English opening. c5. We have knight to f3, knight to f6, knight to c3, and knight to c6, the 4 knights of the English. g3 preparing to fianchetto the light square bishop, and pawn to e6 preparing to strike with d5. Bishop to g2, we have pawn to d5, and now c captures, e captures, and pawn to d4. So the Rubinstein variation or the Prague variation, all been known before. We've transposed into the Tarrasch defense. We have bishop to e7, and now there are like 5,000 games that have reached this position, and pretty much always castles is played here. And this has been a popular line for maybe even 30 to 40 years. Kasparov played this move, castles here. Ivanchuk played it. Maxim Vachier-Lagrave played it. Van Gaal played it. So it's a very old line, and everyone plays castles here. But Vincent plays a3. It has been played only once before, and he uses it to try and take Abdusattorov out of any known lines of theory. And there is a game where castles was played, but here Nodirbek just plays c4, and it is now as of move 8 that we have a completely new game, which is very, very exciting. And since the light square bishop is fianchettoed, if white plays e3, maybe even ideas like bishop to f5 to d3 are possible. So we'll see how Nodirbek plays this. We have bishop to g5, castles by Nodirbek. We have pawn to e3, and now bishop to f5, maybe hinting at bishop to d3. But Vincent just plays knight to e5. For the moment, the d3 square is nicely protected. Knight to d7, and here we have some trades. Knight captures on d7, queen captures, and pawn to h4. Vincent shows that he is not up for a boring game. He wants to attack, and bishop d3 is definitely an option. Nodirbek could play this, and well, white cannot castle, but white can kick away the bishop. Let's say bishop h3. First we kick away the queen to a less active square, and let's say after queen to d8, now bishop to f1. And now we can trade here, captures, the king can come to g2, will be very safe, and you don't ever really want to capture on g5 to open up the h-file for the white rook, could be very dangerous. So, well, it's definitely an option. Abdusattorov says he does not want to have any such quick trades. He just goes back bishop to e6, and okay, here we have bishop captures on e7, knight captures on e7, and we have castles here by Vincent. We have bishop to h3, trading off the light square bishops, captures, and just rook to e1. The queen can't really do all that much by herself here, and the e4 is coming. So Nodirbek brings the queen back, and now pawn to h5. And if you play pawn to h6 here, you stop white's advancement. You have a pretty steady game, but he says that he wants to have at least some fun, so he plays pawn to f5. And okay, the rook is now coming to f6, then to h6, then he wants to win the h5 pawn. We have a4 by Vincent, rook to f6, and now pawn to b3, busting open this advancement here. C captures on b3, queen captures on b3, and now rook to h6, going after the h6 pawn, and just queen to b5, offering a queen trade. Since Abdusattorov knows that he's going to win the h5 pawn, he doesn't really mind. Rook to d8, and now queen captures on d7. e7. Rook captures and pawn to a5. So why did Vincent do all this? Why did he give up the h5 pawn? Well, the thing is, the b7 pawn is now a backwards pawn, and he just wants to attack it with the rooks. There's no way that black will be able to prevent this. So okay, rook captures on h5, but now just rook e to b1, putting pressure on the b7 pawn. We have rook to h6, and now knight to a4, adding another defender to b6, but also preparing to go knight to c5. So rook to c7, preparing to double up on the c file, and now rook to b5, doubling up on the b file. Rook h to c6, and now rook a to b1, going after the b7 pawn. We have rook to c1 with check, captures, and now king to g2, and of course rook back to c7 defending, but you can only defend it for one move. Vincent just plays knight to c5, and now he will win the b7 pawn, as black cannot defend it twice. So pawn to b6, this is how Nodirbek decides to give back the pawn, captures, and now rook to a7, looking for some activity with the rook. And now, after all is said and done, one cannot help but notice that Vincent has a one pawn island, and Nodirbek has two pawn islands. So the d pawn and the f pawn will be a little bit weak, especially the d pawn. Okay, you can defend the f pawn with a move like g6, but the d5 will be an eternal weakness. And the base of Vincent's pawn chain is the f2 pawn. As long as that pawn is defended, you don't have to worry about losing that pawn. The only way you could lose it is, let's say, rook to a2 is played, and you somehow get the knight over to e4 or g4, but of course that's a lot of moves, and it's not easily achievable. So rook to d6. Vincent, of course, goes after the pawn. Now the knight cannot move. G6, we have knight to d3, and now rook to b7. And here we have king to f3. If you go after the pawn right away, it's just rook b5. You can defend the pawn, so it's not really all that impressive. So king to f3 first, king to f7, and now knight to e5 with check. King g7, knight to d3, and now pawn to h6. And here, Nodirbek gives a bit too much, perhaps, to Vincent, because now Vincent can infiltrate with king to f4, but he doesn't. He plays knight to f4. The reason why king to f4 is so deadly is because after pawn to g5, you have to go all the way to e5. And it seems like you really don't want to be here, but there really isn't any danger. The rook cannot deliver a check, the knight cannot move. If you move the knight, then this pawn falls, this pawn falls. So while the king doesn't really have any squares, you can't check the white king, and the king would be very safe here. So definitely a winning position for Vincent. But okay, he goes knight to f4. He doesn't want to go for it right away, and this is move 39. Vincent can't spend all that much time here. He needs to reach move 40 and gain time. So here, rook to b5, defending the pawn, and now knight to e6, check, king to f7, and knight to c5. Again, the rook no longer defends the d5 pawn, so the knight again cannot move. We have rook to b2, now comes knight to d3, just circling around. We have rook to b3, and now knight to e5 with check again. King to g7, and now rook to d7, attacks the knight. We have king to f6, only good move, and now rook to a7 by Vincent. Rook to b2, and now pawn to g4. And here, if you go for captures and captures, then you just resign here as black, as the h6 pawn is hanging and the knight will be hanging. You cannot defend both. So here we have pawn to g5, but now we have king to g3 by Vincent. The problem is this position is again winning, but you have to calculate very far away to see why it is winning. Rook to a6 wins material by force. I will show it because it's a lot of fun. King to g7, now g captures on f5, knight captures, and now rook to g6 check. Okay, king h7, the pawn is defended. Now rook f6, you go after the knight, and once the knight moves, you go knight to g4. Put pressure on the h6 pawn, and only now after h5, which is pretty much the only way to save the pawn, rook to h6 check forces the king to g8, and now this knight to f6 check nicely connects with the d5 pawn. That's how you win that pawn. But okay, after g5, Vincent went to king to g3, but now Nodirbek gets pawn to f4 check, and he's back in the game. E captures, g captures, and now you can't capture because of rook captures on f2. The more material disappears on the board, the more sure Nodirbek is that he will be able to draw this game. king to f3, and now rook to d2, goes after the d4 pawn, rook to a6 check, king to g7 defends the pawn, and now rook to b6. There's no good way to take care of this pawn, but also Vincent wants to give it up to trade even more material to go into a favorable endgame for him, and there's really nothing better than to capture this pawn. Rook captures on d4, but now Vincent with the tricky rook b7, and now look at this, you have to defend the knight, king to f6, and now rook captures on e7. Now you cannot capture the rook. If you capture the rook, just knight to c6 check, and Vincent would be up a full knight. So instead, after rook captures on e7, the only move for Nodirbek, rook to e4, forces Vincent to give back the material, and now rook to h7, and now king captures on e5, just winning back material. We have rook captures on h6, and now rook back to b4. So 2 pawns each, rook to h5 check, king to d4, and now rook to h8. Vincent's pawn structure is still much better. The two connected pawns are much stronger. King to e5, and now rook to e8 with check. King f6, rook to f8 with check, king to g6, and now rook to f5, going after the pawn. But now Nodirbek starts advancing his passed pawn as well. Pawn to d4. We have rook to d5, putting the rook behind the passed pawn, as one always should, and king to f6. We have king to e4, and now we have pawn to d3 with check. Another tricky move by Nodirbek, saying that if you capture, my draw is all but ensured. If king captures on d3, then there's this very tricky pawn to f3 move. You go after the pawn, and after g5 check, king to g6, king to e3 now goes after the f3 pawn, but now rook b3 check, king f4, and now the only move that saves the game for Nodirbek would be king to h5. And here you are very happy. If king to f5, you don't care, just rook b4. And if pawn to g6, just king to h6. There's no way to promote this pawn to a queen. Rook d6, you will keep defending, rook to b2. If king to f6, you just go rook b5. And now after pawn to g7, you play rook g5, and you don't care about anything white does. If rook to d7, you just play rook to g6. Now the king cannot go up the board because of captures, and if you go down the board, then still just captures, and even though white will win the pawn, it will be a very easy draw. This is a draw, of course, all of you know this. So after d3 check, king to f3 by Vincent, says, all right, keep your pawn for the moment, I will capture it on the next move, but I'm keeping everything defended here. King to e6, and only now rook captures on d3, and now king to e5. So now Vincent up a full pawn. Can he win this? We have rook to a3, rook to b5. Nodirbek just has to wait and see how Vincent will try to improve his position. King to g2, and now king to f6. We have rook to a8, and now rook to b3, cutting off the white king. So rook to a5, and now we have king to g6. We have rook to f5, going after the f4 pawn, and rook to a3. Now it seems that Vincent can win the second pawn as well, but the problem is the black king is just too active. King to g5, and once you move the rook, you will play king to h4, and this is a well-known drawn position. There is nothing white can do. You cannot advance this pawn, you cannot advance this pawn, you cannot advance the king forward, everything is covered. If you go f4, then rook to g3 check, just wins the g4 pawn, and of course if f3, which seems like you should be able to play it, then rook a2 check, and once the king moves, king to g3 nicely infiltrates. And if white starts pushing, you can even ignore the pawns, just king f3, you threaten checkmate, and the threat alone of just checkmating the white king will be enough to get a draw, as white will forever be stuck checking the black king. So okay, rook to a3 was played. We have f3 immediately by Vincent, and now rook to a4, defending the pawn. King h3, we have rook to b4, and now king to h4, making some progress here. Rook to a4, and now rook to f8. We have king to g7, attacking the rook, rook to f5, and now king to g6. Nodirbek happy with the draw here, not allowing the white king to go any further. Rook g5 check, king to h7, and now rook to h5 check, king to g6, and now pawn to g5. Vincent finds a way to make progress here, but now rook to a1. We have rook to h6 check, king to f5, and now rook to f6 check, pushing the black king back so the white king can go up the board. We have king to e5, and now the problem is well, not a problem. The good thing for Vincent is that he is completely winning here. The problem is he has to play a very precise move in order to actually win this. So feel free to pause the video and try to find the only move, well, sort of the only move that wins the game, while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding this brilliancy, as you are a true master of the endgame. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is rook somewhere along the f-file. Not f5, that would be weird, but f7 or f8. And the point is, and it was not played in the game, after rook to f8, it's impossible for black to stop the promotion of the g-pawn. What I mean by this is that after rook h1 check, let's say king to g4, you play rook to g1 check, king to h5, and now you have two options: continue checking or go after the pawn. We're gonna check both. If rook to g3, then you go king g6, rook captures on f3, now you kick away the king. Both of these squares are covered. King to d5 or wherever, doesn't really matter. King f5, that's the point. Now the rook cannot go behind the pawn because a king captures on f4. And if rook f1, now you play rook to e4 first. And now after f3, you will play rook to f4. You have to make everything precise, otherwise you're not going to be able to win this. Pawn to f2, now pawn to g6, and the rook cannot move here. The king defends the pawn. As soon as the rook moves, you're going to win the pawn, advance the king, and promote your pawn to victory. Or the other way, if you don't go after the g3 pawn, if you play rook to h1 with check, still not a problem. King to g6, rook to h3, again you can go after the pawn, but now rook f5 check. King to d6, now rook captures on f4, the pawns are defended, now you have two connected passed pawns with a very active king, again completely winning for white. However, after this king to e5 move, Nodirbek tricked Vincent, and Vincent played rook to b6, and this is the, I believe, the third or maybe even fourth time Vincent what's the saying, I don't know, but does not take advantage of his winning position. And probably because he already lost 3 games in this tournament, he probably just was making moves to make sure he doesn't lose, and then maybe he just didn't go all that extra mile to find the winning ideas, but who knows. Now rook to h1 check is a completely different story. King to g4, rook to g1 check, king to h5, and now rook to g3 is very much different, because now you don't have the option of checking the white king. You could play something like rook to b5 check, but the king goes up the board and it's not enough. So here rook to b3 was played, defending the pawn, but now king to f5, and here you have another big problem. Rook to h3 is now checkmate. You could play something like g6, rook to h3 checkmate. So Vincent has to worry about that as well. Rook to b5 check, king to e6, now pawn to g6, managing to advance the passed pawn, but now just rook captures on f3. And after pawn to g7, rook to g3, this is not even close to what we discussed in that line. King to h6 defends the passed pawn, now pawn to f3. We have rook to b8, now preparing to win the game. But rook to h3 with check. Now you have to be very careful here. It seems like pawn to f2 and everything is perfectly fine. Like if you advance the pawn, we just give up the rook, and then rook captures f1 queen. But this would blunder the game for you. Rook to f8, and now white is completely winning. Endgames are tricky like that. You always have to be ready. So rook to h3 with check, king to g6, and it was in this position on move 89 that the players agreed to a draw, as there is nothing more to be done here. Once a rook to g3 is played, for example, you will have to repeat, otherwise you're going to lose this pawn, rook h3, or you play king g5, rook g3, king f4, and then we just trade pawns, and then of course it's a draw because both players only have a king and the rook. So yeah, after king to g6 on move 89, Vincent, Keymer, and Nodirbek Abdusattorov drew their game, which means that Nodirbek remains far ahead of everyone else. We can even check the standings after round 9. These are the standings. Nodirbek leading the tournament, half a point ahead of Anish Giri, who won that brilliant game against Ding Liren. Anish defeated Ding and Magnus, and he is still not leading the tournament. That's how good Nodirbek is playing in this event. Then with 5.5 points, Wesley So, Fabiano Caruana with 5 points, Fabiano Levon, Pragnananda, and Magnus Carlsen. With 4.5, Richard Rapot, 4 points, Parham Maksulu and Ding Liren. With 3.5, Jordan Pamfores, with 3 points, Arjun Irgesi, Vincent Keymer, and Gukesh. So pretty incredible stuff. Now it's gonna be really wild because Nodirbek and Anish have yet to play against one another, so that will probably be what decides the tournament, or maybe not. Maybe they just draw their games and win all the other games against everyone else. Still many games in the tournament, so we'll see what happens. But yeah. A tough break for Vincent, who is still without a single win in this tournament, but Nodirbek, on the other hand, is without a single loss in the tournament. He had his chances, but he missed too many of them, as they were objectively winning. But yeah, Nodirbek will defend. If you don't play it to perfection, he will defend, as you've seen here. So yeah, once again, hope you guys enjoyed that. I would like to thank Blaže Burkot, Rob, Victor David, Peter Knurich, and John Noonan for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Tata Steel until it finishes. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. And sorry for a bit of a longer video, but all the endgame magic had to be revealed. See you soon.